I'm back, and I figured I'd make at least one video throwing my fellow Sonic fans a bone before I review Sonic Mania in a couple of months. I'm not here to rage over Shadow being evil against Sonic Forces, as stupid as it is to me, or to comment on every new zone that gets revealed, but somehow this video still ended up being kinda long. You know what's really funny? I remember a time when Sonic Team would have refused to allow classic Sonic into the games they were making. This was way back when Sonic 4 Episode 1 hadn't been released yet. People were a bit peeved, including me, about modern Sonic being the star in a game that otherwise vomited classic nostalgia. Green eyes, whatever. And Sonic Team actually commented on the fan outrage. I forget if it was Izuka himself or Ken Blah or someone else, but I remember the gist of how it went. You know how when Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts the writers go out of their way to talk shit about the old games, basically going, "Why would anyone want to play a lame game like that? What, you do? You gotta get with the times, man. It's all shooters and driving simulators now. Stop being dumb." Well, that was Sonic Team's attitude towards classic Sonic for a time, and a lot of fans backed them up on this. Keep in mind I'm paraphrasing, but they basically came out and said, look, the kids of today aren't into classic Sonic. They won't buy a game that features classic Sonic in it. He's too cutesy and roly-poly to appeal to their modern design sensibilities, too chibi. Why do you think we even made modern Sonic? That's what kids like now, someone extreme and tall and athletic like Bugs Bunny. It went something like that, and yeah, they did reference Bugs Bunny, that's kind of funny. But you get the idea. They seemed pretty adamant about this for a time, touting modern Sonic like they were so proud of this design because the kids of today think classic Sonic is lame, guys, he isn't cool enough, this guy's way more marketable. As if they couldn't allow classic Sonic to infect their games because anything he appears in is guaranteed to fail. And they didn't know any of this, they just speculated and expected it to go that way. It was like their opinion, man, and they tried to get us to drink that Kool-Aid too. Then Sonic Generations came out a couple years later. I guess you could call it an experiment, but it paid off. The message was made clear from the sales. Classic Sonic is still cool and relevant, people are still interested, and my word, how their tune has completely changed. Now they seem almost ashamed to look back and talk about Sonic 4, and you can bet we're never getting an episode 3. Sonic Mania is Sonic 4 now, sorta. Shit was weird, man, like, it was a different world then. Sometimes I feel like it can't even be the same world, like I must have stepped over from another timeline where things went differently along the way, but no, I didn't. No, seriously guys, I'm not an alien from another dimension, I swear, you gotta believe me. And now some people say they're getting sick of seeing classic Sonic appear in these games? Wait, what? Make up your minds, guys, you're just helping to confirm what Sonic Team said so many years ago. One thing that does bug me about Sonic Mania is the selection of levels they picked. Yeah, I know. I'm hoping there's at least a few more levels like Studiopolis, and that wasn't the one original level they had to show off. But that's why I don't like making speculative videos before these games come out anymore. My impressions will just be outdated in a few months as new information comes out and the game is actually released. But if they're going to go back and reuse levels from the Genesis Mega Drive games, must they reuse the same levels they already did in Generations? Green Hill, okay, understandable. Chemical Plant, understandable to a degree. But they're really starting to press their luck. It wouldn't even be that big of an issue if it was just Sonic Mania, but Silver even mentions Chemical Plant as Sonic Forces, so what, we're going there for the 4th time in that game too? Is this just how all Sonic games are going to play out from now on? You start at Green Hill, then Chemical Plant, then Sky Sanctuary, and so on. There are other cool zones in Sonic's older games, guys. We don't need to keep going back to Chemical Plant. That said, I do like some of the new gimmicks they've whipped up for it in Sonic Mania. For example, this blue chemical is bouncy, but if you inject the green chemical into it, you bounce higher. That's creative. I appreciate them adding cute little touches like that. But I don't ever want to go back to Chemical Plant in a future game. Please. But still, we're getting a classic Sonic game, something Sonic Team wanted nothing to do with 8 or 9 years ago. Holy crap. You know what else is funny? It's not just Sonic Team's attitude that's changed over the years, but also the fans. You may have noticed I tend to spend a little more time talking about a game's story in my more recent reviews. Heck, the entire second part of my Aquaria review was just breaking down the experience of playing through the story, while the first part focused on the gameplay mechanics. I didn't talk as much about story in my early reviews because anytime you want to talk about story in a Sonic game, people told you to shut up and focus on the gameplay. They say the story doesn't matter, only gameplay matters, just get to the good stuff. I was exposed to this mentality early on and basically browbeaten into adopting it myself, influenced to a point that I regurgitated this stuff in my videos, like focusing solely on gameplay and ignoring everything else in a game was something to be proud of, something that elevated me, like that's the hill I should want to die on. Like, oh wow, look at this guy, he really has his priorities straight, he knows what to focus on, he isn't whining about Riot Drummond being gone. It's understandable that people felt this way, though. This was a time when stories in Sonic games were widely and rightfully considered a joke, so we stopped taking that aspect of the series seriously. But over the years, people have raised their standards and started demanding better storytelling. And you know what? Good. But there's also been a massive shifting of priorities in other areas too. I was very critical of Sonic Unleashed when it was new, specifically the daytime stages, and if you want me to delve into why, here's a link to an older video in the description where I talk about that. I'm not going to repeat it all here. See, I believe that the best formula for Sonic's gameplay is a pretty even mix of speed, platforming, and exploring. You can mix it up a bit here and there. There's always going to be breezier levels like Chemical Plant or what have you, but overall, I enjoy traversing fun terrain with crazy shapes and finding alternate routes to the end, and the more frequently those routes cross over with each other, making it one interconnected, cohesive thing, the better. I saw the daytime stages as a bad sign of things to come. I thought they were going to ditch all that other stuff and just have Sonic run down narrow, mostly empty corridors that only occasionally intersect from now on, and everything that added grit to Sonic's gameplay would be thrown out the window, which to my relief, didn't happen. Colors was a little so-so and went too far in other directions at times, I think, with loads of repetitive block platforming, but Generations is where the formula really hit its stride. I love stages like Modern Seaside Hill for how much there is to do in them on your way to the goal, and I'm hopeful that we'll get more stages with that level of complexity in Sonic Forces. From the sound of it, other people really enjoy this added depth to the formula too, and they want to see Sonic continue in this more expansive direction. But back when Colors and Generations were just ideas on a whiteboard in Sonic Team's office and the daytime stages were all the rage, people hated my opinion. I still get comments on my Sonic Unleashed review originally uploaded in 2009 to this day from people saying, "No, your opinion sucks. Kill yourself, you retro fag." Yeah, that was a word Sonic fans threw around a lot in those days. There just weren't very many people back then who appreciated this idea of an even mix of speed, platforming, and exploring, at least not vocally. They were so enamored by the daytime stages with their increased emphasis on pure speed, still so freshly wounded by Sonic 06, that they didn't want anybody dissing the daytime stages in any capacity, and they were pretty convinced that this was the best if not the only direction Sonic should go in from then on. Just leave the daytime stages the way they are, just speed, speed, and more speed. It's simple, it's functional, it's something. Let's not fuck this up and almost kill Sonic a second time, yeah? I get it, they didn't want to shake things up. They finally felt safe with the daytime stages. They didn't want to risk losing what they had. And they come up with all these arguments in favor of this super streamlined style like it was this innovative, brilliant new thing that evolves Sonic's gameplay to new heights and really tests your senses. They'd make it out like just memorizing quick-stepping sections turns you into this super elite cyber ninja with ultra-honed reflexes who can anticipate anything coming your way because you played through Jungle Joyride enough times. And I'm just talking about the normal stages in the story mode, not the DLC packs that are often hard as balls, but not for reasons I appreciate. My views were my own, but needless to say they were very contrarian for the time. I had my supporters, some of you still tuning in today, but my reviews got pretty controversial because what I was saying just didn't fly with most of the Sonic fans who were speaking up then. Nowadays though, oh man, now almost everyone seems to have adopted my mindset. Anytime you go to a forum thread or a comment section where people are discussing this gameplay, it's much more common than it used to be to see people bring up this consistent blend of speed, platforming, and you get the gist by now. I'm sure you've heard other people say it. And I'm just wowed by how things have shifted the other way, to a point where people are bashing Sonic Forces because Parkway Avenue looks so empty and boring and simple. Hello, doesn't anybody remember Windmill Isle or Modern Green Hill? They always make the first stage or two simpler than the rest, and this is just the opening stretch of it, the first 30 seconds. We don't even know what the rest of the stage or any of the other 3D areas will be like. We have no reason to assume this is the deepest the gameplay will ever get. I'm just looking at this and thinking, oh hey, cool robots. That's another thing people used to say a lot. Don't judge a game for the trailer footage, just wait until it's out, then we can nitpick it all we like. Now it feels like I'm the one who has to say, hey, take it easy guys. I don't even mind this, but it's like, when did Sonic fans get so woke? Between this and the last video, I must sound like such an old herb. It's so strange though, how different things are than they were a decade ago. My teenage self couldn't have imagined things being the way they are now. I once felt like a man on an island all on his lonesome. Now I'm in a lake filled with other people who suddenly all seem to agree with me. And these days, the same people who used to call me and my pals idiots, they like to make it sound like they've always thought this way, like they've always shared this stance and said these things. No you didn't, you nudnik. I said these things. You were the one calling me a retro fag and telling me to stop nitpicking over things that didn't matter then. Granted, it's not like I was the only person in the world who said these things, but I was one of the first to be vocal about it on YouTube, as hostile a place as it was in those days. Now everybody's doing it and it's pretty surreal. You know, once in a while I'll get a comment or a message from someone saying something like, "I think Sonic Team saw your videos," which has always sounded stupid to me. Insinuating guys like Aaron Weber watched my videos and followed my advice, if you could call it that, is like calling Richard Kuda single-handedly responsible for Classic Sonic appearing in Sonic Generations or Sonic Mania being made now. We're not that important. But when it comes to the changing climate of the Sonic fanbase, how its focus has shifted over the years, how the nature of the discussion has changed, when people come to me saying I'm some legend that changed the Sonic fanbase in some small way, that I planted the seeds of these ideas with my crappy videos, and that we wouldn't be quite where we are today if not for my bitching, I mean, I hate to think that. I used to tell myself, boy, I'd have to be really delusional and have a big ego to credit myself for that. But a couple people even credited me for that on my last video, and I have to wonder, do they have a point? Could they? Could it be possible that I was this pioneer, this rebel, who threw these ideas into places where they were more accessible and changed the discussion? However small of an impact it may have been, if there's any chance my work has paid off this way, then I guess my job is done. Nah, I'll still make videos about future Sonic games. Anyway, I don't know what to think about this. I'll leave it to you guys to figure it out and decide for yourselves. At this point, I won't be surprised if at least a few of you, maybe more, unsub just for this video alone. So you know what? Let's talk about something positive. I think it's amazing to see individuals like Christian Whitehead working on Sonic Mania. The idea that these guys went and hired someone who makes Sonic fan games to make a real Sonic game and is turning out this good makes this a special time to be a Sonic fan. There are so many touches that only a fan would think to try out, for better or worse. Reusing levels and all, it looks like a labor of love. Just imagine if Nintendo started hiring new talent like Duck64 to work on future Metroid projects. But then I look at some of the 3D Sonic fan games released in recent years, and it makes me wonder if there's another diamond in the rough like Whitehead to be found here. When I bring this up in, say, a group chat, this idea the next generation of official Sonic developers may be making fan games now, I get responses filled with pessimism, doom, and gloom, saying this mustn't be allowed to happen as it can only possibly lead to bad things, people inserting their crappy OCs into the games and shipping them together with Sonic. And, it's a little late for that, and I'm not just saying that because of the character creation aspect of Sonic Forces. In my opinion, that door was open in 2001 with the introduction of characters like Shadow and Rouge, characters I still love. And while it's easy to make fun of the Sonic fanbase for crappy fanfictions and whatnot, it's there, and that door is never going to be closed. So come on, let's just stop trying to put a lid on this and embrace the madness, why don't we? I don't think we have to worry about any future games being infected by the stuff that, to a degree, is a played-up stereotype. Let's look at some 3D fan games, yeah? Sonic World is like, okay, let's take Sonic Adventure and Sonic Heroes and every 3D Sonic ever, really, and smush them together. Okay, cool, it's pretty fun, I like it. Green Hill Paradise is like, hey, let's take Sonic as he works in Unleashing Generations and try to make him play more like classic Sonic. Then Sonic Utopia is like, let's just be classic Sonic in 3D. Like, straight up, just a 3D version of a classic Sonic game. And oh, it does this in ways you may not have expected. Green Hill Paradise, while still decently fun, is a bit overwhelming even for me. I found my way to the end without that much trouble because I guess I have a borderline supernatural sense of direction. But just performing the most basic actions to get to a place was so much more frustrating than it ever should be. The game is cool, it's just clunky as hell in some ways. I still like it, sorta, but Utopia, in my opinion, has really cleaned things up and raised the bar here. Granted, it's still very open to a point where some players still think it's too big, but I just don't see where they're coming from. Sure, I wouldn't mind it being narrowed a little bit, but the level design is so simple. It's just one big left turn that funnels you to the goal, with a nice forest area to the left, a more challenging stretch of lakes and cliffs to the right, and then a field in the middle where you have plenty of visibility and elbow room. I think of these sort of like the lower, middle, and upper routes you'd see in many zones from the Mega Drive Genesis games. And most of the people I've watched playing this for the first time on YouTube, guys like Some Call Me Johnny doing blind runs, found their way to the end with little trouble because the terrain is designed in this subtle way that goads you to the end. Interesting shapes that say, over here, climb me, please, that activate your primal need to scale and conquer stuff that ends up pushing or rather pulling the player closer to the goal until, oh look at that, you're already there. Just semi-consciously keep track of where you are in relation to the background in the skybox and you'll never get lost, I guarantee it. It's so easy. I do have a bit of trouble keeping Sonic from falling off the sides of some of these tracks, but that just means I suck. Whatever, I'm not here to do a full review of Sonic Utopia today, but I do want to point out something in Utopia that blew my mind. See this structure here? That ramp leading from the floor up to the wall to that ledge to the right? Watch what happens here. Holy crap, did you see that? I ran up the wall, then jumped off the wall to land on the ledge behind me. Do you have any idea how monumental this is? Never before have we seen anything like this attempted in modern Sonic games. Classic games in 2D, sure, you'd see that all the time. You run up one wall, jump the other way, and land on a platform. But in 3D? No, never will you see anything like this even attempted. Now without a set of boosters at the bottom to push you up, a second set about halfway up the wall to help you along, and say 3 springs lined up together at the top to ensure you make it to that ledge without having to put any effort into it. And that is so stupid. Like, you see what I mean? All throughout Sonic's 3D history, starting with Adventure, they put these child safety locks, these unnecessary proofing measures on everything. Springs and boosters anywhere it's possible for the player to mess up. To make sure you won't, because they know that petty players and review sites will screw up somehow and jump into a pit or just have a hard time making it up there, and they'll blame it on the game. They'll say, this is bad game design. The game should take into account how impossible it is to get up there on your own and have some sort of safety net so I don't lose a life and have to try again. And a lot of these springs and boosters really don't need to be there, but they're put there to ensure that you can't possibly mess up and blame the game for it. But look here, look at this! How simple and easy this kind of level design is to pull off in 3D. Sonic Team and many Sonic fans would have you believe this is some Herculean labor that can't be done. It's too hard to translate into 3D and it just isn't worth undertaking. But the creator of this fan game, this proof of concept, was able to make it work beautifully. It feels so natural and super smooth, and it's kind of infuriating to me that we could have had this kind of design carried over from the 2D game so flawlessly into 3D all along. Like, look, okay, I'm just running up the wall and jumping up and look, I made it. This is what I'm talking about. Fan game developers actually try this stuff. They're taking risks, they're innovating, and they make it work. And look, I know that anyone who doesn't care that much about the finer intricacies of Sonic's gameplay and level design or physics or any of that stuff is going to hear me spurging about this and think it's the dumbest shit they've ever heard. But anyone who's been following me since the old days, since I first started reviewing Sonic games, you should see how significant this is. This is why I see such promise in the Sonic fan gaming community. They're so inspired by this icon that they're able to pull off this shit the professionals never could, at least until now. And I want to see these young, inspiring innovators, so full of hope and promise for Sonic's future, to be given a seat at the table with the likes of Christian Whitehead, to become the next generation of Sonic game developers. I know that'll sound like a disastrous scenario to some people, but I think it could work. Where else are they supposed to look for future talent? From people that don't give a crap about Sonic, but oh hey, they took some special classes, so that makes them qualified, right? They've already muddied the waters with the games we're getting this year. We've proved ourselves worthy. I don't believe there's any going back. The Sonic fan base, the culture around it, even the games, are all nothing like they were close to a decade ago. It's been amazing to watch it all unfold, and it's still unfolding. This journey isn't over, even if it somehow seems like it. I can only wonder how things will continue to change over the next decade, what sort of games we'll be seeing then, who will be making those games, and what we will have to say about them. Personally, I like where things are going. Well, that's it for today, folks. Sorry this video was all over the place, but I think it's safe to say I have my shit together here, and I'm finally back for reals. My next game review will cover Attack 2, The Staff of Dreams, and in the meantime, please consider checking out my recently released books, available for Kindle and print on demand. It's a series about an autistic cyborg girl who befriends merfolk and has to deal with pirates and stuff. I created and designed everything in this series, and I think it's safe to say I haven't worked this hard on anything else in my life. Links to everything in the description. Toodles!